it's a big day for the advocates. Let's get more on this story. Our reporter Sipho Stuurman is inside the Constitutional Court. He joins us now live. Hey, Sipho, thank you very much indeed for your time. Firstly, just remind us about some of the arguments the various sides put forward.
Well, a very good morning to you and our viewers at home. The saga involving Advocate Jiba and Lawrence Mrwebi continues, and now this is set to be the final round here at the Constitutional here in Johannesburg. Of course, we know that the General Counsel of the Bar, Blaine, brought them here to have them struck off the role of advocates. This, of course, after the appeal at the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein found in the favor of these two advocates, saying that they should remain in the role of advocates. Of course, this goes all the way to 2016 when the Pretoria High Court had struck them off, and then, of course, they then followed that up and then went to Bloemfontein to appeal this. However, in Bloemfontein, Jiba and Mrwebi then won that case, but then the General Bar of the Council, in a last-ditch effort, found that they then brought this case to the Constitutional Court. And now what we are going to be hearing here is that whether this is a matter, first of all, that should be heard by the Constitutional Court. You remember that the Constitutional Court deals with matters that relate to the Constitution. So issues on whether or not Jiba and Mrwebi are fit to remain in the role of advocates, is it a matter that should be heard by this court? So those were the arguments that this court heard in March when this matter was being heard, to the application was being launched by the GCB. Of course, Mrwebi and Jiba said that this matter has been settled and that it should not have come before the Constitutional Court, as it does not contain any, constitutional matters. But certainly, yes, one of the reasons that the General Counsel of the Bar said it was important to bring it before the Constitutional Court is because the Supreme Court of Appeal, which had given Jiba and Mrwebi a lifeline, was actually divided. You know that the Supreme Court of Appeal has about 5 judges, and it was 3 judges that ruled in the favor of Jiba and Mrwebi, but 2 judges agreed with the initial 2016 judgment of the High Court. So they felt that because the Supreme Court of Appeal was divided in this matter in itself, that perhaps then the Constitutional Court should have the final say on whether they should remain on the role of the advocates. And certainly it would be a nail in the coffin of the two if the Constitutional Court indeed does agree with the General Counsel of the Bar and removes these two. You'll remember, of course, that they've been fired in their respective positions in the NPA following the Mohoro inquiry, which had a very scathing report against the two, saying that they were unfit to hold a senior position within the NPA. I know that I covered that inquiry, and it's important for them, for their professions, to remain as advocates if they want to perhaps practice privately. So this affects their livelihood. It's a very important battle for them. But yes, we shall find out here if the Constitutional Court thinks that agrees with the General Counsel of the Bar that they should be removed in the role of advocates. However, if the Constitutional Court here does not agree, then they will remain in the role of advocates. Blaine.
Just want to talk about that Mohoro inquiry and if it has any bearing on this case. So the question, I guess, is whether or not they remain fit and proper to be advocates. So remind us about what came out of the Mohoro inquiry into the fitness of the 2 officials to hold office.
Well, indeed, this was going to have a bearing in terms of whether they remain in the NPA, because for them to have been able to hold those senior positions, that is, we know that Nomgcobo Jiba was the deputy head and Lawrence Mrwebi was the special director of public prosecution. So for them to have remained in those positions, they need to be advocates. So if they were to be removed from the role of advocates while they were in those positions of power, then they would automatically then have to fired from their positions. But then what has happened is that now we've had these 2 processes running at the same time. We had the Mohoro inquiry, we had this application here by the General Counsel of the Bar at the Constitutional Court. But the Mohoro inquiry, of course, concluded its work much earlier and found that they were unfit to hold office, and that their general conduct was poor, they lack integrity, they lack leadership. This, of course, relates to their handling of high-profile cases. One of the cases we've spoken about a lot is that of former crime intelligence boss Richard Mrwebi. The case was controversially withdrawn by Lawrence Mrwebi without doing proper consultation, and Jiba then, who was the acting head of the NPA, failed then to hold Mrwebi to account for his decision. Jiba herself has come under fire in the manner that she put charges of racketeering against the former KZN head, that is Johan Boysen. There's also allegations that Jiba herself had put false evidence in court. So lots of allegations there. And so as a result of that, Jiba then, of course, the president, we know, instituted that Mokgoro inquiry into their fitness to hold office. And as we know, that the inquiry found them to be unfit. And as a result, then they were fired by the President Cyril Ramaphosa in April. But however, of course, that does not stop this process. And this process is a different one. This one is by the General Counsel of the Bar. And the General Counsel of the Bar wants them to be struck off the role of advocates for the way that they had conducted some of these investigations. And as I mentioned to you, it is certainly going to affect, they want to hold on to this. They've been fighting this all the way. It started back in 2015 and to the Supreme Court of Appeal. They won there, but the Supreme Court of Appeal was divided in the matter, with 3 judges ruling in their favor and 2 not so much. Hence, we are now here at the Constitutional Court. But of course, before the Constitutional Court answers the merits of this case, whether these 2 should be removed, it should also answer the question, is this a matter that should be heard by this court, the highest court of the land? So we're going to be getting that judgment here at 10 p.m. This morning. And certainly, if the Constitutional Court rules that well, they should be removed, then it will certainly be the end of the road for Jiba and Mrwebi in terms of this role, remaining in the role of advocates. But we do know that they had indicated when it comes to the Mokgoro inquiry that they intend to review the findings of the Mokgoro inquiry. So they said, I remember Jiba released a strongly worded statement saying that it was unfair. The decision to fire her by the president was an unfair decision, and that those findings against her by the Mokgoro inquiry were not correct. So she had indicated that she was going to review the Mokgoro inquiry, and that also she was going to go to Parliament to state her side of the story. Remember, the president has fired them, but Parliament has to approve the president's decision to fire the 2. So she said that before Parliament can approve the president's decision to fire Mrwebi and Jiba. Jiba said that she was interested in going to making her own representations in Parliament. That is part of a fight-back plan. Following that, she will also then launch a court review of the Mokgoro inquiry in an effort to save her job. We also know that when she was informed by the president that she was found unfit by the Mokgoro inquiry, she had requested that the president transfer her to a different government institution where she can keep a position of a similar level as that she held at the NPA. But the president said the president declined that request by Jiba. So she is somebody that is trying to sort of, redeem her name and hopefully, find a job within, the public sphere. But as it stands right now, she remains fired. And right now, we shall await to see what this court has to say on whether she should remain on the role of advocates.
10 o'clock it is. We'll check back with you a little later on. Thank you very much indeed for your reporting, Sipho Stuurman, coming to us live from inside the Constitutional Court, battling with those sun rays that are beaming through the windows of the Constitutional Court. Thank you very much indeed, Sipho, doing well there as well. Okay.